Welcome back. This is Pastor Joyce from Christ the Cornerstone Church, and tonight we're going to kind of delve into making a difference in our own lives by having some quality time with God. And I know I've mentioned this before on some of these shows, and I keep coming back to it because I noticed that it's something that, because of the way we are in our humanness and in our daily lives, it's something that is so easy to get off track with. And I know myself where, I'm working a full-time job. I also work full-time for the church, and I have a relationship at home, and I'm wanting to have a relationship with God. And depending on, and then of course there's, maybe me, I'm kind of on the bottom of the list maybe sometimes. And, what happens is I'm running on fumes sometimes, and I know that I'm just doing things and doing, and going about my business, and I'm not always bringing my best self into those scenarios. Even at work, I might be thinking about church, and if I'm at church, I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about Becky at home and needing to some things to do around the house, or to have some quality time with her and a date night and all those other kinds of things that keep that relationship alive and fresh. And then I've got other people in the church that might need something and might want something of a spiritual nature, and they need something right then and there that might even be new and fresh, not the same old answers that you kind of, the pat answers that sometimes we can almost do and say, God will take care of this, don't worry about it. Those kind of things can sometimes not be what the person needs. So I've had to, and I realize if I struggle with that, because I know there are times when I have to get my priorities straight and move God back up the ladder, where I spend that time with God so that I'm filled with that presence, that peace, that wisdom, that guidance that I so need, and I'm more divine than human. Then I can be more effective. I can be more effective at work. I can be more effective at home. I can be more effective at church. Effective meaning how I do what I do, so that I'm doing it with a loving heart, with kindness, compassion. I'm really listening, paying attention, really focused on that one moment, that one person, and that at that time. And I know more wisdom because it's godly wisdom. I hear God's voice more intuitively when I'm not hearing all the other clamors of all the other things or events or future events particularly that I might be distracted with. And, I mentioned earlier that, I want to look at the book of Luke chapter 10. And this is a story where Jesus and his disciples were on their way to Jerusalem. And they go to a village, and in this village, it's Bethany, is a city, and they visit Martha, and she invites them into her home. And, Mary was her sister. And so in the verses, it's Luke chapter 10, beginning at verse 38, and it says, Jesus and his disciples continued on the way to Jerusalem. They came to a village where a woman named Martha welcomed them into her home. Her sister, Mary, sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was worrying over the big dinner she was preparing. And she comes to Jesus and says, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. And so you get the scenario. You get, Martha welcomes Jesus into her home. She's so enthralled with Jesus, and she wants to make a big impression on him. And he's like the major guest in her house, because obviously this is God visiting. And she goes into all, high gear, preparing this great meal for him and for all of his disciples. And so she's all into making the meal. And most likely, she's probably not even greeted him appropriately. She probably just says, okay, here, sit here, and I'm going to go make you a meal. And she just, who knows what transpired in terms of their relationship or that friendship that maybe Jesus wanted to bond with her. But anyway, Mary sits at his feet and listens to what he has to say, and she's eager to be taught from him. Just think about it. This is the Son of God. This is the Son of Man. This is someone who is God sitting down at her feet, and she's sitting at his feet. What an opportunity. Just imagine if you could be sitting in your living room or your dining room and God could sit there right beside you. and he was right there beside you. And you could ask him anything, and he could teach you anything you needed to know. You had that opportunity. That's what Mary did. Mary took that opportunity to sit there at the master, at the creator of the universe, as the God who could answer any question she had. There she was. Martha, on the other hand, is more concerned about feeding him and impressing him and serving him, which is nothing wrong with serving God, but the problem is, what could she possibly learn from just doing? How could she change? How could she grow? By doing. And so you see this acted out in her too. She gets frustrated. And she's like, doesn't it seem unfair? I could just hear it. Tell her to help me. What's going on with her? She's being lazy. And she had an attitude problem in that moment. And, she didn't like the fact that Mary was just sitting there. And sometimes I think, some of us are like that too, even in churches or in our home. Somebody's sitting, reflecting or studying or having quiet time, devotional time, or some people, are coming to church trying to receive knowledge and start a relationship with God and get to know God. And, sometimes it's like, well, they're not doing anything. Why aren't they helping in the church? Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they part of our ministries? And I have to help people sometimes realize that, doing something doesn't make us valuable, doesn't make us important. It doesn't make what we're doing even worthwhile, particularly if we're not doing it with the right attitude, and we're just doing it because we have to be doing something. And Jesus turns to Martha, and he's gonna take this as an opportunity to teach her something, and he says, "My dear Martha, you're so upset over all these details, so many distractions. There is really only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it, and I won't take it away from her." So what is he saying? There's only one thing that any of us ever need to be concerned about. That's our soul. That's our spirit. That's our internal feelings and our well-being spiritually. That's the only thing that matters in life. All these other things that we do are byproducts of what our spirit is doing. And again, I always believe that we are human beings, not human doings. And I think that it's really important that all of us take this lesson from Luke chapter 10 and look at the difference between Martha and Mary. There's a contrast between the two of them. Had Martha sat down with Mary at Jesus' feet, she could have learned what was really, really important. Being with God. Being with people that you love. Just being at peace and at rest and at a place where you can learn and can grow, and finding that even keel. There's, if you look at lakes, they're really smooth on the surface, and underneath there's a lot of busyness under there. I just know it. And so often that's what people are like. They might even look on the outside like they're at peace, but underneath they're all stirred up, and they're all, they're thinking about so many things, and they're anxious, and they're nervous, and it causes stress. And I really think it, obviously leads to physical ailments. If you ask me, we know of it. We know of people having heart attacks and high blood pressure and all these issues physically. They're the result of unrest under the surface in our spirit. And so that's why it's important to just put all those things that are bothering you or bugging you, or the things that you're so concerned about, all those details, how about handing them over to God and saying, here, you take care of that, and I know you can, and I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm just going to sit here and be with you and get internal peace and rest and find some solace and some solitude and some serenity. And, so often people, they find it in a vacation, and they don't really realize how badly they needed a vacation until about the third day, when they go, wow, I can, I'm actually relaxed. And sometimes it takes a long time for that to happen. And we all need that time of rest and that time of finding that internal peace where we're not concerned about what's going on outside of us or doing this or doing that. And that's the great lesson that Jesus teaches Martha. So if you're a Martha out there, and if you get busy, maybe the Lord's saying to you tonight, you're so concerned about so many other things that don't even really matter, and they're not going to matter 10 years from now, 5 years from now. They're certainly not going to matter 5 minutes from now. So be at peace.